My son said he was embarrassed. I was just a cleaning lady. Then his CEO boss made him realize I was the reason he had a job. Sometimes the people we love the most see us the least, until something forces them to truly look. Drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and subscribe to hear more stories of transformation and redemption. I froze in the hallway, my hand clutching the serving tray so tightly my knuckles turned white. The sound of my son's voice drifted from the dining room, clear as a bell despite his attempt at a whisper. "I can't present a cleaning lady as my mother to the board of directors," Ethan said to his wife, Catherine. "We've worked too hard to get to this point." The words hit me like a physical blow. For 27 years, I'd scrubbed floors and cleaned toilets at Clean Pro Services to put food on our table after my husband died. 27 years of backaches and chemical-roughened hands so my son could go to college, build his career at Horizon Technologies, and become the executive celebrating his promotion tonight in our cramped, suburban Boston dining room. What if someone recognizes her? Catherine's voice was tense. Someone's bound to make the connection. Nobody will. She doesn't exactly move in our circles. I watched my grandson Timothy's eyes widen as he spotted me in the hallway. At 12, he was old enough to understand the cruelty in his father's words. His gaze dropped to the floor, shoulders hunching with secondhand shame. My throat tightened as I placed the tray on the side table. The chicken marsala I'd spent hours preparing suddenly seemed pathetic, my desperate attempt to prove my worth through a meal I couldn't even afford to eat regularly on my salary. "Mom?" Ethan appeared in the doorway, his expression shifting to forced brightness. "We were just wondering where you were with the food." I smoothed my Target dress, the nicest thing I owned, and smiled. "Just adding the finishing touches." Catherine appeared behind him, her smile not reaching her eyes. "Martha, you've outdone yourself. Though next time, perhaps something more contemporary? I could send you some recipes." I nodded, the familiar burn of humiliation creeping up my neck. As we moved to the table, I caught Timothy watching me, something like apology in his eyes. Later, as Ethan toasted his promotion, I raised my water glass with trembling hands. "To my son," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I've always been proud of you." For a moment, I thought I saw something flicker across his face, recognition, perhaps, of the statement's double edge, but it vanished as quickly as it had appeared. Driving home to my small apartment that night, I replayed the conversation in my head. 27 years of sacrifice reduced to an embarrassment, a dirty secret to be hidden away. As I parked in front of my building, I noticed my hands still shaking on the steering wheel. Something inside me, something that had been bending for years, finally snapped. "Not anymore," I whispered to my reflection in the rearview mirror. I didn't yet know what that meant, but for the first time in decades, I felt something other than resignation. Tomorrow would be different. I just didn't know how. "Use the back door, would you, Martha?" Catherine's smile was brittle as she blocked the front entrance to my son's house. Behind her, I could see a dining room full of people in business attire. "We're having a little impromptu gathering." Ethan's boss dropped by with some colleagues. I stood on the doorstep, clutching the container of homemade cookies I'd brought for my regular Sunday visit with the grandkids. "I didn't know you were having a party. Last-minute thing?" She glanced nervously over her shoulder. "If you could just go around back and maybe help in the kitchen? We're a bit overwhelmed." I recognized the lie immediately. Her catering services van was parked in the driveway. "Of course," I murmured, already stepping backward. The kitchen staff barely acknowledged me as I slipped in through the service entrance. I stood awkwardly in the corner, still holding my cookies, watching uniformed servers prepare elaborate hors d'oeuvres. Through the kitchen door, I spotted Ethan laughing with a distinguished older man. My son looked completely at ease, as if his mother wasn't hiding in the kitchen like a shameful secret. "Grandma!" Timothy's face lit up as he pushed through the swinging door. He wrapped his arms around my waist, smelling of the expensive shampoo Catherine insisted on. I hugged him back, grateful for his warmth. "I brought your favorite," I said, offering the container. "Timothy!" Catherine appeared in the doorway, her voice sharp. "What are you doing in here?" "Visiting Grandma," he answered, already reaching for a cookie. Catherine's eyes narrowed. "When we have important guests, it's Mrs. Jenkins, remember? And now isn't the time. Go back to the party." Timothy's face fell. "But now, please." After he left, Catherine turned to me. "Martha, I don't mean to be rude, but perhaps today isn't the best day for a visit." I nodded, setting down the cookies. I understand. I'll go. And next time, please call before coming over. She hesitated, then added with forced lightness, you know how busy Ethan is these days. As I drove home, I realized something had changed. This wasn't just about today. The weekly Sunday visits I'd counted on since Timothy was born were being systematically eliminated. The pattern continued. A family dinner postponed indefinitely. A school recital where my seat was mysteriously given away. Each excuse more transparent than the last. One evening, I called Ethan directly. Is everything okay? I asked. I feel like I'm being kept away. A long pause. Mom, it's not personal. It's just complicated. Complicated how? Another pause. My position requires certain appearances. You understand, right? I did understand. I was the wrong appearance. That night, I stared at my uniform hanging on the closet door, the dark blue polyester with Clean Pro embroidered above the breast pocket. For the first time, I wondered if my lifetime of sacrifice had been worth it. The next morning, I received a notification from my supervisor. Clean Pro had secured a new contract with Horizon Technologies, my son's company. They needed experienced cleaners for the night shift. My finger hovered over the Accept Assignment button on my phone. Part of me wanted to refuse, to avoid any chance of embarrassing my son further. Instead, I pressed Accept. Perhaps it was time to stop hiding. Corporate photos sure don't tell the whole story, I muttered, wiping dust from a frame containing Ethan's professional biography on the executive wall at Horizon Technologies. The studio-perfect smile, the expensive suit, the carefully crafted words beneath the glass. Born to educator parents, Ethan Jenkins developed his passion for excellence early. Educator parents, not parent, and certainly not cleaning lady mother. I'd been working the night shift at Horizon for 2 weeks, carefully avoiding the finance floor where Ethan worked. Each night, I scrubbed and polished the offices of people who would never see me, who would never know I existed unless something wasn't clean to their standards. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a reminder for Timothy's birthday party tomorrow. I'd received a formal invitation in the mail, as if I were a distant acquaintance rather than the boy's grandmother. At least I was invited, I whispered, my voice echoing in the empty hallway. The party was worse than I imagined. When I arrived at the country club, a host directed me to a table far from the family, where the catering staff and party entertainers sat. I watched from a distance as Ethan and Catherine worked the room, moving easily among Boston's upper-middle-class professionals. When I approached Timothy to give him his gift, Catherine intercepted me. The children are playing a game right now, she said, her fingers digging into my arm as she steered me away. She leaned close, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. I think it's better if you don't draw attention to yourself. I watched her whisper something to the children. Timothy's eyes flicked to me, then away quickly. Whatever she said had worked. He didn't approach me again. Later, I overheard a conversation between Ethan and a colleague about family backgrounds. My father was in academics, Ethan said smoothly. My mother, he faltered briefly. She was in support services. I nearly laughed at the creative phrasing. Support services. As if I'd been an administrative assistant instead of the woman who cleaned toilets and emptied trash. That night, I returned to my apartment and opened my laptop. A quick search brought up Ethan's company profile. There it was in black and white. Born to James and Martha Jenkins, both educators. My late husband had indeed been a high school math teacher before his death, but I had never been anything but a cleaning lady with an unfinished technical degree in administration. As I closed the laptop, my phone lit up with a text from my supervisor at Clean Pro. Special request tomorrow. CEO's meeting room needs prep before early morning meeting. Pays extra. I accepted immediately, partly for the money, but mostly because something was changing inside me. Each discovery of Ethan's shame felt less like a wound and more like fuel for a fire I'd long suppressed. In my bathroom mirror, I studied my reflection. The gray-streaked hair I couldn't afford to color professionally. The lines earned from years of physical labor. The eyes that had seen too much disappointment. Support services, I said to my reflection, testing the phrase. Then I laughed, a hard sound that surprised even me. Well, Martha, maybe it's time to give them some real service. I slept restlessly that night, dreaming of invisible women wiping away their own existence. You're Martha, right? The man's voice startled me as I finished polishing the conference table at 6:30 a.m. I hadn't expected anyone for at least another hour. I straightened, wincing at the familiar ache in my lower back. "Yes, sir, I'm just finishing up." He was in his early 50s, with kind eyes and a casual confidence that marked him as someone important. "I'm Richard Dawson, HR Director. I like to come in early when we have board meetings." Instead of dismissing me or simply ignoring my presence as most executives did, he extended his hand. "Thank you for your work. This place looks immaculate." The simple acknowledgement caught me off guard. I wiped my hand on my uniform before shaking his. "Just doing my job, Mr. Dawson." "Richard, please." He set his briefcase down. "How long have you been with CleanPro?" 27 years. The number hung between us, a testament to a lifetime of labor. His eyebrows rose. "That's impressive loyalty. You must have seen companies come and go." "More than I can count," I admitted. "But this is one of the better contracts. Clean building, respectful staff mostly." "Mostly?" He smiled. I backpedaled quickly. "Oh, everyone's been fine. I just meant in general." He leaned against the table, seemingly in no hurry despite the early hour. "Do you have family in Boston?" The question was innocent, but I hesitated. "Yes, a son and grandchildren." "What does your son do?" Pride warred with caution. "He works in corporate finance." I busied myself arranging chairs. "Where at?" The moment stretched. I could lie, but something in Richard's genuine interest made me answer honestly. "Here, actually. Ethan Jenkins is my son." Richard's surprise was evident. "Ethan Jenkins? Our newest finance director?" I nodded, tension creeping into my shoulders. "Please don't mention it to him. He's private about family matters." Richard studied me with new interest. "He's never mentioned his mother works here." "Not works here," I corrected quickly. "I'm contracted through CleanPro, and he doesn't know I'm assigned to this building." I hesitated. I'd appreciate if it stayed that way. Something flickered across Richard's face, understanding. Perhaps, or concern. "Of course, that's your business." He checked his watch. "I should let you finish. Thank you again, Martha." After he left, I leaned against the table, heart racing. Something about the encounter left me unsettled. It wasn't fear of Ethan discovering my presence, but rather the strange feeling of being truly seen for the first time in years. Over the next few days, I noticed Richard observing the cleaning staff with unusual attention. Once, I overheard him correct a young executive who had snapped his fingers at one of my colleagues. "Everyone deserves basic respect," Richard said firmly, "especially the people who make our work possible." The following week, I was dusting the HR department when I spotted Ethan through an open door, speaking with Richard. My son's back was to me, but I could see his body language confident to the point of arrogance. "The custodial budget is an easy target for cuts," Ethan was saying. "Those people make minimum wage anyway." Richard's eyes briefly met mine over Ethan's shoulder. I ducked away, but not before hearing his response. "Those people, as you call them, are essential workers, and I'd appreciate if you remembered that everyone here deserves dignity, regardless of their position." I hurried away, my face burning with a complex mix of emotions: shame at my son's attitude, gratitude for Richard's defense, and something new stirring beneath it all: resolve. That night, I stared at the faded acceptance letter from the technical college I'd abandoned after my husband's death. 25 years later, it was long past relevant, but I couldn't help wondering, what if I hadn't given up everything? What kind of example had I set for my son? "Enough," I whispered. Tomorrow would be different. I just needed to figure out how. The storage room smelled of dust and forgotten ambitions. I'd been assigned to clean out the archives scheduled for shredding mindless work, moving bankers' boxes from shelves to the disposal cart. Most cleaners hated this task, but I found comfort in organizing other people's discarded histories. "Scholarship Program Records 2005-2008, read one label. I hesitated before placing it on the cart. That time frame overlapped with Ethan's college years. I shouldn't look. It wasn't my business. But whose business was it? If not the mother who'd raised him alone. I opened the box, justifying my invasion with efficiency. I needed to ensure nothing important was accidentally discarded. Inside were folders organized by year, then alphabetically by recipient. My fingers trembled slightly as I found the J section in 2006. There it was, Jenkins, Ethan Horizon Community Support Scholarship. I knew about the scholarship, of course. It had covered his tuition when my meager savings couldn't, but Ethan had always described it as merit-based, something he'd earned through academic excellence. I opened the folder. The first document was Ethan's application essay, filled with flowery language about perseverance, and ambition. Below it lay the scholarship committee's assessment form. Candidate qualifies under Category C, Children of Essential Service Contractors. Parent, Martha Jenkins. Clean Pro Services, 9 years service. My heart stuttered. The scholarship had been specifically for children of service workers. Ethan had never mentioned this detail. I flipped through more pages, finding a thank you letter from Ethan to the committee. His handwriting, still youthful, but unmistakably his, grateful for this opportunity that recognizes my mother's contributions to Horizon through her cleaning service. However, I request confidentiality regarding the specific category of my scholarship, as I am working to establish my professional identity separate from my origins. My hands shook so badly I had to set the papers down. He had known. All this time, he had known that his education, the foundation of his career, was directly tied to my embarrassing profession. Deeper in the file was a follow-up letter from his junior year. Have successfully transcended my humble beginnings, and would prefer all future communications exclude references to custodial services. The betrayal felt physical, like a blow to my chest. Not just that he'd hidden the truth, but that he'd been ashamed of me from the very beginning. I carefully returned everything to the folder, closed the box, and sat on the cold concrete floor. Tears threatened, but something harder and more determined pushed them back. That evening, I called Ethan, keeping my voice light. I was just remembering how proud I was when you got that scholarship to Northeastern. Yeah, that was a big deal, he replied, distracted. Listen, Mom, I'm heading into a meeting. Was it called the Horizon Community Support Scholarship? I pressed. A pause. I think so. It was a long time ago. Do you remember what it was for? What made you eligible? His voice tightened. Academic achievement. Academic. Obviously. Mom, I really need to go. After hanging up, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the wall. The foundation of my relationship with my son, my sacrifice for his success, was built on a lie. Not my lie, but his. For the first time in decades, I felt something beyond hurt and resignation. Something like anger, but cleaner, more purposeful. I opened my laptop and searched for Adult Education Programs Boston. Then, with steadier hands than I'd had all day, I typed Professional Development Opportunities for Service Workers. The first result was a Horizon Technologies initiative called Career Pathways. The program description mentioned Richard Dawson specifically. I bookmarked the page, a plan forming in my mind. If Ethan had built his success on my work while denying it, perhaps it was time I built something for myself, without hiding anything. You have more qualifications than you give yourself credit for, Martha, Richard said, reviewing my application for the Career Pathways program. Treasurer of your church for 15 years? That's significant financial management experience. I shifted uncomfortably in the plastic chair across from his desk. After 2 weeks of deliberation, I'd finally worked up the courage to apply for the Professional Development Program for Service Contractors. It was just balancing the books for the congregation, I said. Nothing fancy. Richard raised an eyebrow. Managing a $200,000 annual budget isn't nothing fancy, and your technical college coursework in administration, even if you didn't finish the degree. That was 30 years ago, but you've kept your skills current. I see you've completed computer literacy courses at the community center. I nodded, remembering the Saturday mornings spent learning Excel while my peers enjoyed their weekends. I didn't want to fall behind. That's exactly the kind of initiative we're looking for. Richard closed my file. You're accepted into the program. You'll maintain your regular cleaning schedule 4 nights a week, with 2 mornings dedicated to administrative training. My heart raced. Are you sure I qualify? There must be younger applicants. Martha, Richard interrupted gently, you're exactly who this program was designed for. People with valuable skills and work ethic who haven't had the opportunity to advance. He paused. I grew up watching my mother clean houses for a living. I know what it's like. I blinked back unexpected tears. Thank you. That night, I started a journal. Not the dramatic kind with Dear Diary entries, but a factual record of events, conversations, and my own reflections. If I was going to reinvent myself at 58, I wanted to document the journey. The first entry was simple. Applied and accepted to Career Pathways. Ethan still doesn't know I work at Horizon. Started with basic Excel training today. Each day brought small victories. Mastering a new software function. Receiving a compliment from an instructor. The growing ease with which I navigated the corporate environment that had once seemed so foreign. I created a separate section in my journal specifically about interactions with Ethan and Catherine. Recording their dismissive comments and exclusions wasn't about building resentment, but about acknowledging a pattern I'd enabled for too long. 3 months into the program, Timothy started visiting me after school. Catherine's busy schedule meant he was often alone until evening, and my apartment was closer to his school than their house. "Dad never talks about when he was my age," Timothy said one afternoon, helping me prepare dinner. "What was he like?" I told him stories about Ethan's childhood, his determination to excel, his paper route to save for his first computer, the nights I'd find him asleep on his textbooks. "Did you always clean buildings?" Timothy asked, his 12-year-old directness catching me off guard. "Yes," I answered honestly. "After your grandfather died, it was the best job I could get without a college degree. It paid the bills and gave me flexibility to be there for your dad." Timothy nodded thoughtfully. "Dad gets weird when people ask what you do." I focused on chopping vegetables. "Some people judge others by their jobs. That's stupid," he declared with adolescent certainty. "You work harder than anyone I know." His words warmed something long cold inside me. I hadn't realized how much I'd needed that simple validation. That evening, when Catherine picked him up, she noticed the administrative training manual on my coffee table. "Taking classes?" she asked, tone suggesting the futility of such efforts at my age. "Just keeping my mind active," I replied, not ready to reveal my transformation. Not yet. The next morning, as I practiced my new database skills in the Horizon training room, I caught my reflection in the darkened computer screen, straightened posture, focused eyes, a quiet confidence I hadn't possessed in years. The cleaning lady was still there, but someone else was emerging too. "Your data entry accuracy is exceptional, Martha," my supervisor in the administrative department noted, reviewing my morning's work. "Would you be interested in taking on some additional responsibility with the vendor database?" A year into the Career Pathways program, I'd established a new routine: cleaning 4 nights a week, administrative work 2 mornings, and my first ever paid vacation time approaching. My hands still showed the wear of decades of cleaning, but my employee badge now had dual department designations. "I'd love to," I replied, the confidence in my voice no longer feeling foreign. Later that evening, as I cleaned the executive floor, a task I still performed, despite my advancing administrative role, I heard familiar voices around the corner. I froze, spray bottle in hand, as Ethan and Catherine emerged from the elevator. "I still don't understand why you need to check the presentation room tonight," Catherine was saying. "The event isn't until next week." "Because I need everything perfect," Ethan replied, not noticing me standing partly hidden by an open supply closet. "The quarterly investors meeting is—" He stopped abruptly as he finally saw me. Recognition, shock, and then unmistakable horror crossed his face. "Mom?" The word escaped like air from a punctured tire. I straightened, spray bottle still in hand. "Hello, Ethan." "Catherine." Catherine's eyes widened, darting from my uniform to my face. "Martha, what are you doing here?" "My job," I replied simply. "I've been with the Clean Pro team assigned to Horizon for over a year now." Ethan's face had drained of color. "A year? You've been cleaning my building for a year without telling me?" "You never asked where I was working," I pointed out. "And I specifically requested assignments away from the finance floor." Catherine's perfectly manicured hand clutched her purse strap. "Does anyone know you're Ethan's mother?" The question's naked panic might have hurt me a year ago. Now it merely confirmed what I already knew. "That's not really relevant to how well I clean, is it?" Ethan stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Mom, you need to request a transfer. This is completely inappropriate." "Why?" I asked, genuinely curious about how he would articulate his shame. Because it creates a conflict of interest," he stammered. "I don't see how. I don't report to you. I don't clean your office. We're in completely different departments and shifts." "Different departments?" Catherine interjected. "What does that mean?" I hadn't planned to reveal my full transformation yet, but the moment seemed right. "I'm also part of the administrative team now. Through the Career Pathways program, I work in vendor management 2 mornings a week." Ethan's expression shifted from embarrassment to something closer to panic. "You're working in administration? Here? Since when?" "About 6 months now," I replied. "Richard Dawson has been quite supportive." "Richard knows about this?" Ethan's voice rose slightly. Before I could answer, a familiar voice came from behind me. "Knows about what?" Richard approached, nodding cordially. "Evening, Ethan, Catherine. I see you've run into one of our most promising Pathways participants." The silence that followed was deafening. You knew my mother was working here, Ethan finally managed. Richard's expression remained pleasantly neutral. Of course. Martha's contributions have been valuable in both capacities. He turned to me. Actually, Martha, I wanted to discuss your involvement in next week's service recognition ceremony. We'd like you to speak about your experience in the program. I felt Ethan stiffen beside me. I'd be honored, I replied. After Richard continued down the hall, Catherine tugged at Ethan's arm. We should go. Ethan looked at me, conflict evident in his expression. We need to talk about this, soon. I nodded, returning to my cleaning cart. I'm free for lunch tomorrow if you'd like. As they walked away, I heard Catherine's urgent whisper, how could you not know she was working in your own building? The answer was simple, though I doubted Ethan would admit it. He had never really seen me at all. That night, I added to my journal, recording the encounter in detail. Then I made a deliberate decision. I would create a second, edited version including only what Ethan needed to see to understand the impact of his actions and leave it where he would eventually find it, not as punishment, but as a mirror. I need you to listen, not talk, Ethan said, his voice tight as we sat in a small cafe 3 blocks from Horizon. He'd insisted on somewhere his colleagues wouldn't frequent. I nodded, hands wrapped around my coffee mug. This situation is untenable, he continued. Do you have any idea how this looks? My mother working as a janitor in my company? Cleaning specialist, I corrected gently. And administrative assistant now? Part-time. He waved this away. It doesn't matter what you call it. What matters is that you deliberately infiltrated my workplace without telling me. Infiltrated? I raised an eyebrow. I took a job assignment through the company I've worked at for 27 years. The same company that was cleaning Horizon when you received your scholarship. His head snapped up. What are you talking about? The Horizon Community Support Scholarship, I said evenly. Category C, Children of Essential Service Contractors. The color drained from his face. How did you... I found the records while cleaning the archive room. Records scheduled for destruction, ironically enough. I took a sip of coffee. You never told me your college education was directly tied to my cleaning job. Ethan's fingers drummed nervously on the table. It wasn't relevant. I earned that scholarship through my grades and application. You qualified for it because of my work, I corrected. Your academics made you competitive among eligible candidates, but without my position, you wouldn't have been considered at all. His jaw tightened. So what? You're working at Horizon to, what, punish me? Embarrass me? No, Ethan. I'm working there because it pays better than my previous assignment, offers professional development, and happens to be where my skills are valued. I leaned forward. Not everything is about you. A muscle twitched in his cheek. You need to transfer. Request another building. No. The simple refusal seemed to genuinely shock him. What do you mean, no? I mean, I won't be giving up opportunities to protect your carefully constructed image. I kept my voice level. I'm good at what I do both jobs, and I'm not ashamed of either role. This isn't about shame, he protested too loudly, drawing glances from nearby tables. Isn't it? I asked softly. You've been ashamed of me for years, Ethan. You introduced me as a support services professional at your wedding. You listed both your parents as educators in your company bio. You've systematically excluded me from any event where I might interact with your colleagues or friends. That's not fair, he muttered, but without conviction. What's not fair is teaching your children to be embarrassed by honest work. Timothy asked me last week why he has to call me Mrs. Jenkins at public events instead of Grandma. Ethan winced. Catherine thinks... I know what Catherine thinks, I interrupted. The question is, what do you think? What example are you setting? Before he could answer, his phone buzzed. He checked it, relief crossing his features. I have to get back. There's an emergency meeting. I nodded, unsurprised by the convenient escape. We'll continue this later. As he stood to leave, I added, the company's 25th anniversary celebration is next month. I'll be there as part of the administrative team supporting the event. Panic flashed across his face. Mom, I won't approach you or acknowledge our relationship unless you initiate it, I assured him. Your secret is safe, as it's always been. After he left, I remained at the table, watching people pass by the window. Young professionals hurrying back to offices, service workers delivering packages, custodians emptying sidewalk trash cans, all part of the same ecosystem, each role essential. My phone pinged with a message from Richard. Committee approved your speaking role for the service recognition segment. Congratulations. For the first time in my adult life, I felt the ground beneath me solidify. I was no longer defined solely by my relationship to others, Ethan's mother, James's widow, but by my own emerging identity. That evening, I accidentally left my edited journal on Timothy's next visit, placing it under a magazine on my coffee table. A week later, it was gone. The countdown to confrontation had begun. "They're saying you engineered this whole situation," Catherine hissed, cornering me in my apartment hallway. She'd shown up unannounced, face flushed with anger. "That you deliberately took the Horizon contract to undermine Ethan's position." I stepped back to let her enter, closing the door behind us. "Who's they, Catherine? Don't play innocent. We read your journal." She paced my small living room like a caged animal. "All those entries about Ethan's betrayal and your plan to work at Horizon. You've been orchestrating this revenge plot for months." I sat calmly on my sofa. "That journal contains facts, not plots. Everything I wrote happened exactly as described." She stopped pacing to glare at me. "You left it for Timothy to find. You're manipulating a 12-year-old boy against his parents." "I left it where anyone might find it," I corrected. "The truth isn't manipulation, Catherine. The truth," she laughed bitterly, "the truth is you're jealous of Ethan's success. You couldn't achieve anything yourself, so you're trying to tear him down. The accusation might have wounded me once. Now I recognized it for what it was, projection. I've never wanted anything but happiness for my son," I said quietly, even when that meant accepting my own exclusion from his life. Catherine's expression faltered slightly. "He never excluded you." "No?" I raised an eyebrow. "Should we count the family events I wasn't invited to? The times I was asked to use the service entrance? The way you both react when I'm recognized as Ethan's mother in public?" She crossed her arms defensively. "You don't understand the pressure we're under. Appearances matter in our world, and having a cleaning lady for a mother ruins appearances?" "Yes," she exclaimed, then immediately looked shocked at her own admission. She recovered quickly. "I mean, it's complicated. People judge based on family background." "Like your father, the school janitor?" I asked softly. Catherine froze. "How did you—" "Timothy mentioned it once. He was proud his other grandfather had worked at his school before retiring." Her face crumpled momentarily before she regained control. "That was different, was it?" I asked. "Or have you both been running from the same thing?" She sank into a chair, suddenly looking exhausted. "You don't understand what it's like, trying to fit into a world that wasn't made for people like us." "I understand more than you think," I replied. "But I made a different choice. I decided to be proud of my work instead of hiding it." Catherine stared at her manicured hands. "It's too late for Ethan to suddenly embrace having a housekeeper mother. He's built his entire professional identity on a different narrative." "Narratives can change," I said. "The anniversary celebration is coming up. Richard has asked me to speak during the service recognition segment." Her head snapped up. "You can't do that. I'm not going to announce I'm Ethan's mother, if that's what you're worried about." I leaned forward. "But I will be visible, Catherine. I won't hide anymore." She stood abruptly. "Ethan will never forgive you if you embarrass him." "The only person who can embarrass Ethan is Ethan," I replied, "by being ashamed of honest work and the mother who raised him." After she left, I sat quietly, processing the encounter. Catherine's reaction had revealed something important. Beneath her polished exterior lurked the same insecurities she and Ethan projected onto me. They weren't villains, they were frightened people desperate to belong. That evening, my phone rang. Timothy calling from his private phone. "Grandma," he whispered, "Mom and Dad are fighting about you. Dad found your journal and now he's saying everything is falling apart." "I'm sorry you're caught in the middle," I said gently. "Dad's boss came over today too," he continued. "Mr. Dawson. He was talking about some speech you're giving?" I smiled slightly. "That's right, for the company anniversary." Timothy was quiet for a moment. "Are you going to tell everyone you're my grandma?" The question hung in the air, laden with a child's uncomplicated pride. No shame, no fear, just the simple desire to be connected. "Would you like me to?" I asked. "Yeah," he said immediately. "Then maybe Dad would stop acting weird about it." Out of the mouths of babes. "We'll see, Timothy. Sometimes grown-ups take longer to figure things out than kids do." After we hung up, I made the final entry in my journal. "The truth doesn't destroy what's real, it only clears away what was false to begin with." The Horizon Technologies' 25th anniversary celebration transformed the company's atrium into an elegant venue. Crystal chandeliers hung from temporary rigging, casting warm light over tables draped in the company's colors. As part of the administrative support team, I'd spent the morning helping with final preparations, watching the space fill with executives, board members, and special guests. My heart raced as I spotted Ethan across the room in deep conversation with Catherine. They hadn't spoken to me since our confrontation 2 weeks ago. Timothy stood nearby, fidgeting with his tie, looking bored until he spotted me. His face lit up, and he started in my direction before Catherine's hand on his shoulder stopped him. Richard approached me, program in hand. "All set for your speech?" I nodded, smoothing my new dress, the first I'd bought myself in years that wasn't from a discount store. Just a little nervous. "You'll be wonderful," he assured me. "Your journey exemplifies exactly what this company should stand for, recognizing potential, regardless of position." The formal program began with the CEO's welcome, followed by a video highlighting the company's growth. When Ethan was introduced to speak about building success through determination, I watched him climb the steps to the small stage, my son confident, accomplished, and still running from his own story. "Success is built on recognizing opportunity," Ethan began, his voice steady as he delivered a polished speech about his rise through the company ranks. As he spoke, I noticed Timothy slip away from Catherine and make his way to my side of the room. He reached me just as Ethan concluded his remarks to enthusiastic applause. "Grandma," he whispered, taking my hand. "Are you really giving a speech?" I squeezed his hand. "Just a short one." "Cool," he grinned. "Dad never mentioned you were speaking too." Richard returned to the podium. "Next, we recognize the contributions of our service partners who make Horizon's success possible. I'm pleased to introduce Martha Jenkins from our Career Pathways program, who brings a unique perspective as both a longtime service contractor and a new member of our administrative team." The room filled with polite applause as I made my way to the stage, Timothy's encouraging smile following me. From the corner of my eye, I saw Ethan freeze in conversation, his head snapping toward the podium. "Thank you, Richard," I began, my voice steadier than I expected. "For 27 years, I've worked as a cleaning specialist, the last 2 of those here at Horizon Technologies. Many of you have never seen me because I worked nights while you were home with your families." I paused, scanning the room. "Invisibility becomes familiar when you work in service. We clean your offices, restock your supplies, and prepare your spaces, usually without recognition. But Horizon has been different, thanks to programs like Career Pathways." I continued, describing my journey from night cleaner to administrative assistant, careful not to mention Ethan specifically. As I spoke, I noticed Catherine whispering urgently to him, her expression panicked. "The most important lesson I've learned," I concluded, "is that no honest work should ever be a source of shame. Whether you clean floors or lead departments, your contribution matters." The applause was genuine, if somewhat surprised. As I stepped down, Richard announced, "Martha is just one example of the multi-generational impact of Horizon's community investments. Our scholarship program has helped dozens of service workers' children attend college, including some who later joined our own executive ranks." I returned to my seat beside Timothy, who beamed with obvious pride. Across the room, Ethan stood rigid, his expression unreadable. The rest of the event passed in a blur. As dessert was served, I saw Ethan excuse himself from his table and head toward the exit. Timothy tugged my sleeve. "Grandma, Dad's leaving. Are you going to talk to him?" I hesitated, then nodded. "I think it's time." I followed Ethan to a quiet hallway outside the main event space. He stood with his back to me, shoulders tense. "Ethan," I said softly. He turned, eyes bright with unshed tears. "Why are you doing this?" "I'm not doing anything to you," I replied. "I'm finally doing something for myself." "Everyone's going to figure it out," he said, voice cracking. Richard practically announced it with that scholarship comment. "Would that be so terrible?" I asked, "being known as the son of a cleaning lady who worked her way into administration?" He ran a hand through his hair. "You don't understand. I understand shame, Ethan," I interrupted gently. "I've carried yours for years." Before he could respond, the door opened and Timothy appeared. "Dad, are you okay?" Ethan quickly composed himself. "I'm fine, buddy. Just talking with Grandma." The simple acknowledgement the first time he'd called me Grandma in Timothy's presence at a public event hung in the air between us. Timothy looked between us, 12-year-old wisdom in his eyes. "Is this about you being embarrassed that Grandma cleans the building?" Ethan flinched. Timothy, it's complicated. No, it's not, Timothy insisted. Grandma works hard and helps people. What's embarrassing about that? Out of the mouths of babes. Indeed. 1 year later, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, adjusting my blazer, not an expensive one, but well-fitted and professional. My hair, now styled in a modern cut, framed a face that looked years younger than it had when this journey began. You look great, Grandma, Timothy said from the doorway of my new apartment, a modest 2-bedroom I'd moved into 6 months ago, closer to both work and family. Thank you, sweetheart. I smiled at his reflection. At 13, he was growing so quickly, his dress pants were already showing his ankles. Catherine called from the living room. If we don't leave in 5 minutes, we'll be late. The Horizon Scholarship ceremony, where I would be the keynote speaker, began in an hour. The event had special significance. It was the first time all the Jenkins family would attend a company function together, openly acknowledging our relationship. The past year hadn't been easy. After the anniversary celebration, Ethan had spiraled through several emotional phases: anger, denial, bargaining, and finally, a tentative acceptance. Our relationship remained a work in progress, with setbacks and difficult conversations. But we were really talking for the first time in decades. Catherine's transformation had been more surprising. After her initial resistance, she'd slowly revealed her own buried insecurities about her background. I spent so long pretending to be someone else, I forgot who I really was, she admitted during one painful but healing dinner. We drove to Horizon together, Catherine chatting about the community college courses she'd started taking, inspired, she reluctantly admitted, by my example. Ethan was quieter, still adjusting to his recalibrated identity within the company. Contrary to his fears, the revelation of his mother's occupation hadn't destroyed his career. There had been some awkward moments and a few snide comments from colleagues, but also unexpected support. Richard had been right. Ethan's story of rising from humble beginnings through hard work and family sacrifice resonated with the company's values far more than his fabricated background had. The scholarship ceremony was held in the same atrium as the anniversary celebration a year earlier. As we entered, Richard greeted us warmly. "The woman of the hour," he said, embracing me briefly. "And the whole family. Wonderful." I scanned the room, recognizing many faces, executives I now worked with regularly in my full-time administrative role. Cleaning staff I still considered colleagues, and students like my son had once been, full of ambition and possibility. When it was time for my speech, Ethan squeezed my hand. "Knock 'em dead, Mom." I approached the podium, looking out at the gathered crowd. 28 years ago, I became a cleaning specialist out of necessity. After losing my husband when our son was just 7 years old, it was honest work that paid the bills and kept a roof over our heads. I paused, making eye contact with Ethan. 17 years ago, that same job qualified my son for a Horizon scholarship that launched his career. Today, he's a director in this company. And I couldn't be prouder not just of his professional success, but of the man he's becoming. I continued, describing my journey through the Career Pathways program and the transformation it enabled. But the most valuable change hasn't been my job title or salary. It's been reclaiming my sense of worth and helping others recognize that every role in this company, from the people who clean your offices to those who lead your departments, deserves respect. After the ceremony, as we mingled at the reception, I watched Ethan introduce Timothy to colleagues, his voice clear as he said, "And of course you know my mother, Martha, from administration. No qualifiers, no evasions, just the simple truth." Later that evening, as we gathered for dinner at Ethan and Catherine's home, a weekly tradition now, rather than the occasional obligation it had once been, I observed my family around the table. Catherine, discussing her studies with animation, Timothy, regaling us with middle school adventures, and Ethan, watching me with new eyes, seeing me, perhaps for the first time. "What?" I asked, catching his gaze. "I was just thinking," he said quietly, "about how much I missed by being ashamed of where we came from." I reached across the table to take his hand. "We can't change the past, but we're writing a different future." He nodded, squeezing my fingers. "A better one." As I drove home that night to my new apartment, I reflected on the long journey from invisible cleaning lady to recognized professional, from a woman ashamed of her work to one who had helped transform an entire company culture. The road hadn't been straight or easy, and some wounds would always leave scars. But for the first time in decades, I was fully present in my own life, not just a supporting character in someone else's story. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.